All right, we're talking with Chris Scheckler here. He's a strength coach at Montana State University. We're talking to him about caffeine and athletics, mainly strength training. So we've got a few questions for him. The first question I want to ask him is, what is, your general consensus of caffeine? Is it bad? Is it good?
Well, caffeine as a drug is an ergogenic aid, so it does increase athletic performance or physical performance, but it's kind of like anything, it's a double-edged sword. You can take too much, but it has been proven that it can increase physical performance. So as far as that goes, it's a viable ergogenic aid.
Okay. We've got a few questions from our group. One is, what is the best kind of caffeine in your eyes? From black coffee to espresso, energy drinks, tea, caffeine pills. There's a lot to choose from. So what would you recommend?
As far as caffeine's chemical makeup, it's all fairly similar. It just kind of depends on the delivery system. Most research done with caffeine is done with oral caffeine anhydrous, which would be similar to a no-dose pill or a Vivarin, something of that sort, some kind of stay-awake pill. Some of it has been done with coffee, being as that's the most readily available high concentration source of caffeine. Those are what I would say are the most practical. Energy drinks can kind of be a double-edged sword because a lot of times you get an accompanying huge amount of carbohydrates with that, simple carbohydrates. So those might need to be stayed away from. Teas, content, depending on the type of tea, is kind of all over the board, depending if it's green tea, black tea, how long you brew it, how concentrated you brew it, and the same with coffee. But usually oral caffeine and coffee are the most readily available and easiest to use sources.
One big thing that is up for sale now and a lot of people are using is 5-Hour Energy. How do you feel about 5-Hour Energy?
Well, it's not to knock it, but it's kind of advertised as having little caffeine and a lot of those B vitamins, but the caffeine and the herbal content of that little 3-ounce thing of juice is going to be caffeine or an herb that has a similar structure to caffeine, so it'll behave the same way metabolically inside your body.
Okay. In concerns of strength programs, how much is too much? At what point do you start losing the benefits of caffeine?
Well, the general consensus as far as caffeine dosing goes is 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So if I weigh 220 pounds, that's 100 kilograms. The best dose, the appropriate dose would be 3 to 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight. So that's 300 to 600 milligrams of caffeine, which is 3 to 6 cups of coffee, 3 to 5 cups of coffee.
So you're saying that more than 6 cups of coffee, you start losing benefits of caffeine?
Well, that's not necessarily losing the benefits, but that's the upper spectrum, or the upper level on the spectrum as far as increasing sports performance goes. Anything above that might not necessarily increase performance to a degree where it's worth it. Lethal doses can be even higher.
There's a lot of controversy lately with the NCAA banning caffeine. Why do they ban caffeine?
Well, it's not necessarily banned. It's a controlled substance as far as the NCAA goes. So some is allowed, but too much will cause a failure of a drug test. So the NCAA's requirements for caffeine are 15 micrograms per milliliter of urine. It's tested via urine, and that's a very high number. You would have to drink many cups of coffee, up to 100 cups of coffee, to put that in perspective, to even test positive for caffeine. So it's not banned. It is a viable substance, and the reason they control it is because it is a useful ergogenic aid. They don't want people, in their effort to level the playing field, they don't want people taking too much, which could even lead up to a lethal dose. They don't want that going up too high, so they control it.
Which sport would you feel would best benefit from caffeine intake?
As far as some of the research goes, endurance sports were some of the earlier ones that immediately responded well to caffeine, and how that works is caffeine intake will decrease your rate of perceived exertion during a prolonged exercise bout. So you'll be working hard, but you'll feel like you're not working as hard. And originally, or up until the last 20 years or so, they thought that strength and power sports didn't really benefit from caffeine. But being as it is such a potent central nervous system stimulant, it will increase your production of epinephrine in your body, and that increase in epinephrine, which is your fight or flight hormone, can increase your muscle contraction power, So there are a few studies that show that anaerobic muscular power can be increased with a acceptable dose of caffeine.
So if you were to take caffeine as a supplement before a workout or a competition, what would be the optimal time to take that caffeine?
Again, what the research shows here is it's got a relatively short absorption period, so it'll get into your stomach lining and be absorbed very quickly into your blood. So 30 to 60 minutes is about the accepted dosing procedure prior to exercise or prior to competition. 30 to 60 minutes, with 45 being right there in the middle. That'll usually get a majority of the caffeine through your blood, and that's not on a full huge amount of huge amount of food in your stomach. That'll get across your stomach lining into your blood in about 45 minutes to be able to see measurable effects there.
That's really all the questions we have. Is there anything else you'd like to say about this?
Nope. It's a usable supplement and it works, but it just has to be like any other drug or supplement. It has to be used smartly and correctly to A, get the best benefits, and B, have the most safety.